Hello and welcome to Teaching Python. This is episode 149, and this week we're going to be talking about guiding education with our good friend Sheena O'Connell. My name's Sean Tiber. I'm a coder who teaches.
And my name's Kelly Schuster-Paredes, and I'm a teacher who codes.
Welcome to the podcast, Sheena. We are so excited to have you here, and I think it's actually been so long since we've recorded an episode that I've forgotten how to speak. So despite the clumsy introduction, welcome to the show.
Why, thank you. Thanks.
Well, this week we're going to be talking about all of the amazing things that you are working on, teaching on Prelude, the Guild of Educators, PyCon South Africa, DjangoCon Africa, some just amazing work that's happening on the other side of the world from us. And since I don't get to your side of the world very often, and I don't think Kelly's been there more recently than I have on that hemisphere.
I have not
that
hemisphere. That hemisphere, not that continent, though.
It's close enough.
Close enough, right?
Well, we're super excited to chat, and why don't we hop into the wins of the week, and then we'll have you introduce yourself to everyone after that.
Okay, right on. So, wins of the week. I'm busy running a course for Canonical, and I see it's on your show notes that we can talk about it. So it's it is a teamwork course, and that's been going pretty well. So I've just started it, and yeah, it's been a very positive experience so far. I'm learning a ton as well. It's a pretty big team, and it's an international team, and so it is tricky on many levels. And then you want a fail of the week.
Oh, we can do a fail.
Oh, do you want to go? Do you want to do your wins first?
Yeah, do a fail. Do a fail. We haven't done fails in a while, so go for it.
Those plants, all of them, fell onto that couch, and it was a hard day. Yeah.
I sense a lot of vacuuming and sweeping happened during that day.
Yes.
You want to?
How about you, Kelly?
Oh, you want me? So I just got back from Texas, San Antonio, luckily before the floods. Well, they were kind of occurring, but I didn't get caught up in them. I went to ISTE, which is the International Society for Technology Educators or something like that. I don't know what the TE is, something like that. But I did get to see a couple of people. I got to give a side hug to Richard Kulata, who was on our show, which was really cool. He's the CEO of ISTE and ASCD because they've combined. And saw a couple of people that were on the show. I got to see Vicki Davis from the 10-minute podcast. And then I got to co-host a podcast presentation with Alfonso he's going to kill me, Alfonso Mendoza from My EdTech Life. And that was awesome. And it was just a good kind of time to see a lot of educators and let them talk about tech. And it's nice to be in a room where everyone's screaming and talking about AI and nobody really knows what they're talking about. I mean, they do know, but they don't know. There's a lot of questions asked while we were there. So it was pretty cool.
Nice. And a fail this week?
Oh, goodness. Oh, no, fail? No, I have lots of fails. It's summertime. I haven't been working on my Anthony Shaw has a GitHub course that he did at PyCon on the pre-course. And I was working my way through it, and I was like solidly for a week. And I had a lot of things installed, and then I haven't been back to the classroom, and that's where my computer that I've been working on has all that stuff. So I feel like a big loser because I had all this momentum, and I was training a whole bunch of different models and really getting to learn a lot. And now I'm going to have to start again at zero because if you don't play with it, you kind of forget about those things. So I feel that's a big fail.
It's like pivot tables in Excel for me. If I don't use them at least once every few months, the next time I do it, I have to start over from the beginning.
Exactly. That's where I am. So you?
Well, I had an interesting experience because it was very much a self-promoting sort of experience, which is not usually what I like to do. But at work, we've been doing a lot with AWS over the last few years, and we've been doing a lot more recently with their AI coding agent, Amazon Q. which is honestly pretty awesome. Like, we've been using it really well across our team, and there's a lot of good benefits to it. And, maybe it's better, maybe it's worse than others, who knows, right? Like, but it works really well for us, and there's some really nice features that they've been coming out with. So their media relations team said, hey, you work for a big company and you're using our AI coding tool, and we can promote that. Would you be interested in speaking to the press about your use of AI and our AI tool in particular? So I did an interview with a writer for CIO Dive website, and another one for Tech Strong TV, which was a video podcast. So I got to use some of my podcasting skills that I've developed over the few years. And so all that stuff got published, and I am now quoted in articles, and it was one of those surreal moments to see your name in print, and it sparks severe imposter syndrome, but it was still pretty cool, and got shared a bunch of places, including the AWS newsroom picked it up on LinkedIn and reposted it to all of their followers. So that was kind of like a cool moment and cool experience. And I think what I liked the most was that it was bringing all of the stuff that we've learned and done, putting this podcast together, into my professional life, and it was something that I couldn't have done before we started doing this podcast. So I felt pretty nice about that.
I hope you have that tagged in there at Teaching Python when you post that, Teaching Python with Sean.
I did work that into the interview several times. I used to be a teacher and I co-host a podcast, but I think they wanted to focus just on the AI part. So. Oh well, next time.
Oh well, next time we'll get that. That's really cool. Hey, you have any fails? I know you like to do lots of fails. None that you want to talk about.
I mean, there's all kinds of fails. Like, things have been breaking left and right around the house. I had a moment over the weekend where the home server that runs all of the automations in the house lost its power supply. Like, the power supply just got fried in a lightning storm. So nothing in the house is working. The lights are stuck on. Like, none of the automations are happening. And I realized that as much as I do for like disaster recovery at work, there's not really the same disaster recovery at home. So we're waiting for Amazon to save the day later this afternoon with a replacement power supply.
Oh, gosh.
That's
in
crazy.
South Africa, we all have surge protectors on our plugs because the lightning storms are intense. Yeah.
Oh, this got fried through a UPS, so it was pretty substantial.
Okay,
it might have also just been equipment failure, but it happened right around the same time as a massive lightning storm.
Okay, wow. Gosh.
Was it some of your rigged Raspberry Pi stuff?
Nothing running on the Raspberry Pi, but that was part of the what do I do next sort of thing. Like, should I try to hack something together that can at least let us turn the lights on and off again using a Raspberry Pi? But so far we're gonna try the Amazon route next, and if that doesn't work, then we're going to Raspberry Pi mode.
I'm sure you can hack it together or something. But I digress. Let's talk about Sheena, because we met you at the Workspace Education Summit, but also at the Workspace. What was it called? Like a side conversation.
Open Spaces.
Open Space. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And tell us just give us a little background about you, yourself, how you've been coding, and because we didn't get to talk about you too much at PyCon. We were just like, hug, hug, hug. Yes, take me to Africa.
Rock on. Yeah, so me, I started coding kind of young, like as a teenager. I think I was about 16 or so. Then I studied electrical engineering, but I just coded on the side for money, and I stuck with coding after that, and that was great. Always had a passion for education. Like, since I was a little kid, I was teaching the other little kids maths and things like that. And throughout my life, I would pick up skills, and then I would get a lot of joy from teaching those skills to other people. And a few years into my career, well, like quite some time in, I'd been working for a bunch of different startups and things like that, because I don't really do that corporate life very well. And it was really cool, but I was very, very fried and burned out. And I got to a point where I was like, I don't want another job. I want to start a code school. And I was looking into doing this and looking at all of the different things that were required that were not teaching, like, getting a telephone line probably and some desks and HR and all of that stuff. And I was like, wow, none of that sounds exciting. I just want to do the teaching part. And at that time, I was kind of floating around doing freelance work and trying to find freelance clients and whatnot. So I was I was trying to get in front of people a lot. So I ran a workshop at PyCon South Africa, and I made it free. Like you get to charge an amount, and I was just like, what's the minimum amount? Just like get people into the room and I'll teach them stuff and then we'll see what happens. And because mine was free, it was full of students from an organization called Umuzi, which is a nonprofit in South Africa that trains people. And they were like, hey, don't you want to run a workshop at our place? I was like, okay. So I did that, and one thing led to another, and I ended up working there and built out a bunch of different syllabuses for them. So when I arrived, they had like some web dev stuff and some data science stuff, and they wanted some like data engineering stuff. I was like, oh, that's going to be tricky to teach in 1 year, but let's see what we can figure out. And a lot of things needed a lot of polish. And so while I was there for about 5 years. It was a really, really great place to learn about education because it was very alternative. It was a place where I was able to build things up from the ground up, basically. I didn't need to stick to traditional mechanisms. It was a canvas. And that was super cool because a lot of like people were kind of used to sage on the stage type teaching mechanisms, and that doesn't really work for coding so much. Like you need to get people's hands on the keyboards. So I experimented a lot and I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about just like the modern science of teaching and what works and how to get people to remember stuff. And that was cool. And it worked really well. Like the students that we got, like we basically looked for people with potential, and then 12 months later they would have a job, and then they would get a promotion. They'd keep those jobs. And so it was very, very effective. So that was good. And now more recently, so I left there and I've started a new thing called Prelude, which is taking basically everything I've learned about education and I'm packaging it into different experiences that I think are useful. I mostly teach grown-ups. In fact, I 100% teach grown-ups. I run a bunch of mostly Django-related mini courses. Like I call them learning sprints, and it's advanced skills. It's not like let's learn from the ground up. It's like, okay, you're a professional and you want to get really good at this, or you want to know how to get these technologies to play nice, and that's been really, really cool. So that's the main thing I do with Prelude was the technical training, but I found a real need for soft skills training as well. So when I feel like I've been talking for a long time, so if you want to interrupt me, please do. But yeah, when I was at Umuzi, I started off focusing entirely on technical stuff because it's like, cool, they're here to learn how to program. But as I interacted with the students more and more, and as I focused on the fact that they were actually they were aiming at getting jobs, like that is why they were with us. They needed a career. They needed a lot more than coding skills. They needed the soft skills. And yeah, so we put a lot of emphasis on training that, just like how do you make a person into a professional? How do you make a person into the kind of person who enter a new team and make their team slightly better? And you can do that from the bottom, but it's tricky. But a lot of it comes down to just setting people up with good timing sometimes, but also awareness of certain things and an attitude around setting the people around them up for success instead of just looking after their own bit. So yeah, it was interesting.
So when you went into the soft skills part of that, how much of that felt like teaching versus coaching? And I'm kind of curious to know how you would distinguish between the two when you hear it positioned that way.
Yeah, I would say it was more like coaching a lot of the time, because you could tell a person like this is what you should do, but they wouldn't necessarily always do it, but so for example, if a student showed up late for a thing consistently, or they didn't show up at all consistently, this is a thing that it would happen, and it's partially a cultural thing. Like if you've grown up in a place where nobody around you is like a professional, and the needs of your family come first, then sometimes you'll say like, oh, I can't come to school today because my uncle needs help at the shop. And so you'd have to sit with people and say like, yeah, your uncle's really important, we understand, but if you did this at your job, you would get fired, and that would really be wasteful. So let's figure out how to not do that. So it was a lot around just practicing those professional skills. The way I started thinking about it was the best way to get somebody to show up like a professional is to build a professional environment and like help people to, you sort of hold people to certain standards, and then they start to hold themselves to that standard as well. So it's tricky. It's really tricky because like in South Africa, we've got this thing called Ubuntu, not the operating system, the other one. And it's basically like I am because we are. It's about looking after the collective. And the folks that we were training for the most part were very embedded in a social fabric that didn't necessarily even understand what we were doing. So it's challenging because you don't really want to pull people away from their cultural background, but it's also like, hey, you're here for a reason, and this is the kind of success that you want. So we're going to need to adapt. So it was weird. Yeah, tricky.
It's so funny. Sorry, I'm going to jump in real quick because I have so many thoughts. I was like writing down things. So I like this I am because we are kind of thing. And I've heard Jay actually had said that one time about Ubuntu, but I'm thinking like this soft skills. So you're training these soft skills, and these are all these things that in the lower levels, because you work with adults, in the lower levels in the younger years, we're having this massive conversation going on, like how do we the humanity in things, how do we teach what's now important? And this morning I was reading something where they're not necessarily going to be bringing in junior interns in coding because the junior interns don't have anything to show except for the fact that they can vibe code or they can produce something with prompt engineering. And in the whole article was like, what is it that you're bringing to the table? And I think that's the interesting part of those soft skills. And you were talking about, bringing in the professional. Say we had to list out some 5 top soft skills. What would you say are like some things that we could, because this is a lifelong learning skill. You don't just say, hey, I'm going to teach you in a workshop a soft skill. It's like something you actually have to practice, right? So what would be like some 5 top soft skills that you think are the most important going into and Sean can weigh that out because he has interns as well and he can compare his list.
Okay. It's hard to pick a top 5, but off the top of my head, I think being able to ask for help well. I think that's a hell of a skill. Because if you set people, if you set people up, if you set the person helping you up for success when you ask them a question, then you'll get more help. And then on the flip side of that is like helping other people. But on the junior level, you don't typically need to do that, but there are times. So I suppose that's something that you need to learn a bit about later on. Showing up on time, that's a big one. It's really a big one. Communicating about difficulties. So it's like, this is going to be late, I'm sorry. Here are the reasons. Communicating upfront instead of like waiting until it's a disaster or a disappointment. What else? I think something that I've seen a lot of juniors do is like show off and write the fanciest code possible to be like, look how fancy I am. I can write such fancy code. And it's like, nobody can read your code. Write simple code. So there's a lot of just like best practices around just like you're not here to show off. You're here to write code that works well with other people's stuff. And like it is a technical skill, but it's also a soft skill in a way, because it's like you want your code to be able to communicate with people. It's like good code kind of, it makes its intentions clear to the people who read it. And that's quite helpful. So that goes down into the clean code realm, but it's useful from a soft skills perspective. What else can I tell you? Okay, that's off the top of my head. I'll need to think a little bit. Sean, why didn't you have a go?
Well, one that I know that we often emphasize a lot with our junior engineers is having a well-defined problem, right? Because we often will encounter problems that, we only see the initial shape of it from, a bug or an error or some need that someone can't quite articulate. And so helping them through that process. And it is kind of a soft skill and a technical skill at the same time, because it's not just about the hard analysis that you can do of error logs and traces and figuring out what the problem is from that. It's also the asking questions and trying to understand, not just what the problem is, but what are some potential causes for that? What could be potential solutions? What are other constraints or considerations? And so there's a lot of work that they have to do to elicit all of that response from all the people involved, and finding the way to coach them through that so that they can ask those questions without being annoying or exhausting or repetitive is often quite challenging.
Okay, that's big.
I think that also goes in maybe with team skills. You're going into that new course, right? So is that's also a big soft skill, right? Learning how to work in a team, or?
So a lot of that, it comes. So the stuff I was focusing on at Muzi was like a lot of very foundational soft skills, so things like showing up on time and whatnot. So this is for a team of working professionals who are already like doing good stuff, and it's more about amplifying what they're already doing rather than saying like, I'm going to come in and fix the team. So the way that works is start off by seeing what the issues are, and if there are issues, and seeing where their frustrations are and the differences between people. So we started off by asking a lot of questions and running a survey just to get an idea of a bunch of different like just where they sit in a few different ways. So a lot of that's based on a thing called the Aristotle Project by Google. You've heard of it. So for the listeners, it's Google's very big, and they have lots of teams, and they wanted their teams to do better. And so they studied like many people themselves just to figure out how to work with their own teams. And they got organizational psychologists involved and things like that. So it's very robust, and like it's very hard to nail down like what makes an effective team. Like effective is such a fluffy word. But different teams had different definitions of that. And the teams that they studied were generally like cross-functional teams, and sometimes cross-cultural teams as well. And they came up with a couple of different things that were very, very important. So number one is psychological safety. So if a team has problems with psychological safety, then there's a couple of things that you can do to address that. And that is like, firstly, teach them about why it's important. But secondly, give people different kinds of communication skills. So things like nonviolent communication and active listening are very, very important. There's also a lot of cultural differences. So there's a really good book called The Culture Map. Am I right? Yeah, Culture Map. And it talks about different spectrums, I suppose, or different axes along which different cultures differ. So if you've got a bunch of people of different cultures in a room and you want to see how they'll interact, like you can research every culture individually, or you can say like, all right, how can we measure them against each other? Like what axes would we use? And there are things around communication style and how people deliver feedback, and like how people deal with hierarchy and things like that. Like some cultures are more hierarchical, some people are less. and that's fine. It's just when you put them together, then they don't understand each other and they come to strange conclusions. So yeah, like on the psychological safety side, for example, you get some cultures who are very direct with negative feedback. They'll just tell you in front of everyone. If they have something to say about your mom, they will tell you in front of everyone. And in some cultures, that would be a slap in the face. And
that reminds me of my first day, my first week teaching in the UK. I didn't realize the sarcasm from an 8th grader. I about sent him to the moon. I was like, "Excuse me?" But it's very interesting. Like if you don't understand a culture and you're trying to work even as a teacher student situation, like that is huge. And just stopping you on the psychological safety, I'm seeing like from ISTE, we had a gentleman called, his name is, oh my gosh, Mr. Lindsay. Okay, Mr. Lindsay is a TikTok famous teacher. He is a math EAL. If you look at him, all he does is talk about brain rot. And he helps all the teachers understand what Skibidi Ohio. And I met this guy and I thought, I was like, okay, he's famous for TikTok. But when he got up on the stage, he was a pastor and he was talking about the fact of connecting and safety, right? And really, how do you make connections? Because that's the first part of working in a team. If I don't understand you, if I don't connect with you, if I don't feel safe with you, why would I learn from you? Why would I want to work with you? Why would I want to give anything to you? So it was a kind of a cool observation, like, yeah, 100%. You have to feel safe in your environment. You have to feel worthy of speaking up, and you have to be okay with the fact that if I do speak up, you're not going to make fun of me. So that's a neat correlation between adults and also kids.
Yes. And there's a lot of things that work well in the education space that are also really worth paying attention to in the organizational space. Like really. So there's that. There's another thing called what's it called? Stereotype threat. So basically, if somebody is a member of some kind of underrepresented group and they struggle in some way, then they are kind of prone to being biased against themselves a little bit and saying like, oh, it must be because I'm this. And if you remind them of that group, then they tend to it's like some of their mental bandwidth is taken up in considering this anxiety that they have instead of like fully working on the task, and it damages people's performance. And so like this has been studied quite a lot in educational settings. It's like, oh, we can do these things in order to reduce stereotype threat. It's like, yeah, we should do that at work too. Because we have the same problems in the working world.
100%.
Yeah.
It's like, and I catch myself saying this, but I have 2 boys. I don't have 2 girls or anything, but I always hear this in the back of my head when my son cries. I hear, stop being a girl. And that was something that I grew up with, like, stop being such a girl. I'm like, really? I'm like one of the strongest, most like very bullish girls out there, and I keep hearing that still in my head, stop being a girl, stop being girl. So that's like a typical stereotype, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of the coding world has been doing well at, of getting more girls into code, and it's not just a girl thing, and that stereotype is not there. So yeah, 100% education and adult life.
Yes.
I think it's amazing how difficult it is to separate those 2 concepts also, right? Because without psychological safety, the problem of stereotype threat is exacerbated and amplified.
Yeah.
And I think it also calls into sharp relief the need for resilience and wisdom as well. And I was thinking about this the other day. I was hearing from a friend that I used to work with that they had an intern that came in, and the intern said something that was a little bit insensitive, right? And the person, and this was like early on, and the person hearing it took offense, right? And what was missing from the interaction was the moment to stop and say, wait, let's talk about this. Let's think about this. Like, why did this happen? How do we fix this? Right. And it went straight from insensitive to hurt. And what I was hoping for in that interaction was the moment to say, we're going to stop for a moment and we're going to talk about this and we're going to figure out why it happened and create that sense of safety and reduce the threat, because now it'll be a place where we can talk through it. And so in order to do that, you need to have the wisdom to recognize the moment when it's happening, right? Or soon after it's happened, and the resiliency to bounce back from, I'm feeling hurt, but there's an opportunity to learn something here. And sometimes it's easier said than done. There's, a variety of impact there that people can feel. But to me, that was like, when you kind of blend all these things together, especially when you're talking about more advanced soft skills for working professionals, sometimes we get so wrapped up in our own background, our own story, the things that are happening, things happening outside of work, that we lose sight of that moment to stop and take a time out and say, we're going to learn from what just happened here and create more safety instead of reducing it.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. I think just like one of the ways I explain getting good at things in general is like, it's about firstly becoming aware of what you need to do, and then it's about doing those things, and you need to get both of these right. And I think people often skip the awareness. They're too caught up in their emotions at the time, as you said, or caught up in like where they're going next. But that pause is a big deal. It feels maybe inefficient in the moment, but it adds a lot of leverage in a lot of ways. And it also like builds connection with people. If somebody did like insult you or do something insensitive or do something harmful, and you have a constructive conversation with them, then you can often like become closer as people and understand each other better. It's positive. I think there was another thing that there's another thing we're thinking about. So there was a study, I don't remember the details of it, but basically there are some teams that are like intelligent teams and there are some teams that are less intelligent teams, and it isn't really like you can take a group of like very clever people and make a really dumb team out of them, and that's quite possible if your team members aren't like paying attention to each other well and plugged into what each other's motivations and experiences are. And like one of the ways to make a dumb team into a clever team is by adding more women, because they tend to be more emotionally aware. But the other way is to just build emotional awareness and build awareness of how other people work and think. And I think like if you find these small points of friction and you highlight it and you say like, look, this is friction. Friction isn't bad. It just means like there's friction and we should probably look at it. That really like helps the team to be smarter as a group.
I think sometimes it's okay to be intentionally disruptive and provocative with this, as long as there's the support behind it, right? So as a team leader or as someone who's coming into a team, if you have that sense of support and safety, whether you're the one providing it or the one receiving it, you have the opportunity to shake up some of the kind of strictures that have come into place in the team. And I think that reorganization, when it happens, leads often to more intelligent teams that are more productive and work better together.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Go. Yes.
I want to talk some more about this, Aristotle, because I think there's so many good nuggets in here, and I really want to thank you for bringing that back up to our attention. But I'm looking at those 5 whatever they're called, 5 factors or 4 factors, right? Psychological safety was the one that you were touching on. That's like number 1. But then they start talking about dependability, structure, clarity, meaning, and impact. And this goes back to your soft skill and, sort of like, I don't know if it was a soft skill, what you're saying, but having a reason for a project, maybe Sean was saying, to have like a defined problem and having meaning and making an impact. And I think there's a lot of takes that you can bring into a K-12 classroom, because this goes into that conversation about agency. Like and I know I'm so sorry about throwing AI in, but that's like my whole life right now. But all these teachers, everyone's out there, you know, why would a kid want to do work, or why would someone want to do a code, an easy code, when AI can do it, or whatever? And there's that reason of, and they have it, meaning work is personally important to team members and impact. The team members think their work matters and creates change. I think that 4 and 5, like, why are you doing anything as a team? It has to have a meaning. And the same thing about learning Python. Sean told me first when I would get in a rut, he's like, find a project. Find something that's meaningful, then you're going to want to learn X about Python. And that's something that we've always promoted. And it's just, it's very funny that we still transfer that into adulthood, meaning we didn't get it right in K-12. So what are we going to do about that? I mean, like, hello.
Yeah.
Still teaching in adulthood, and we're expecting teachers to do it for middle schoolers. Go ahead. I'll let you have some thought on that, because you're teaching this with adults.
Oh, yeah. So there's a couple of different exercises that you can do, but like, so the Project Aristotle 4 factors, like, they list them out in the order of importance. So psychological safety is like the most important thing, because everything else stems from that. So dependability is the next one. And that's like, if you don't feel psychologically safe enough to say, I'm not going to hit that deadline, I can't do that, here's an unpopular opinion, like, then chances are dependability is also going to start to be a problem. So some of the dependability comes from like the ability to push back on things. So like a lot of the time I've seen psychological safety being implemented badly, where it's just like, you don't get to say negative things. That's not psychological safety. That's something else. If you're in a place where you are able to really state the facts and talk about like your weaknesses and like the things that you're like, I don't think I can do that, I think I need help, people become more dependable, and they can depend on each other more. So like, this is almost a side effect. There are certain processes and whatnot that can help with that. So one of the challenges with teamwork training is like, you can train the team, you can't train the process, but you can train the team to look at the process with a certain lens and then give them the tools to communicate and sort things out. So like, if they are working in a place where, I don't know, requests for different tasks come from all 4 corners of everything, then it's like, okay, cool. Clearly you need some way of managing it. What do you guys think? How can you figure it out? So you don't necessarily solve all of the problems, but like, give them the tools to see like, oh, this is an issue and we can in fact fix it. And I think the other thing with that is like, trying to fix everything at the same time usually doesn't work. So I think giving people like a mindset around work is learning and we're doing experiments, like that's also very, very helpful from a dependability point of view. You don't say like, it's an experiment so you can give up at any point, it's not a game, but you can try different things and see what works. And yeah, so that is very, very helpful. Then the next one's structure and clarity. And that's also something that, like, once people are dependable, then suddenly you know what's going to happen next. Like, suddenly things become predictable. And that's, yeah, that's very, very helpful. And meaning is like, so meaning is mostly around personal meaning. It's like, am I growing as a human being? Am I in line with the work? So this is something that's easier to not really train for, but to look at and to get people to look at. So one thing to do on that front is just to get people to examine their own value structures and say, like, what actually matters to you as a human being, and how do these values show up in your life generally, and how do these values show up in your work? So that's a big part of it, just like that level of self-awareness. There's things about growth as well. Like, if people are aware of each other's like abilities and what they want to grow in, and what growth would be useful in the organization, then you can say like, cool, like this task is going to be a bit of a stretch for you. Like, let me know if you need something. And
That's
that's
gonna
very
be
helpful. Yeah.
that's going to be a slight tie-in with like a mindset as well, right? So they talk about that a lot in the education. Are you got that fixed mindset, or you have that growth mindset? Are you up for
Yes.
challenges? What do you value? So, for example, I think most coders, maybe I'm grouping us, but most coders are really lifelong learners. They're problem seekers. They like to solve the problems. They say that we have this growth mindset. If we don't know what's happening, we're going to go to, well, we used to go to Stack Overflow. We'd go to the documentation. Now we just go to Amazon Q. I'll plug that for AWS for you, Sean. But yeah, so I think that's an interesting value to think about. Like, how are you as a worker? How are you as a learner? How are you as a person on a team? Is what do you consider? Because I guess if you're going to what Sean says, asking questions and what you guys asking for help as well, like that's something you value. If you're value the fact that I want to be able to ask questions without someone thinking I'm dumb, I think you kind of need to do that.
Yeah. There's something else that sometimes masquerades as growth mindset that I saw a lot with the students at Umuzi, and it's probably something that gets seen a lot at work as well. And I think it ties into psychological safety as well. I don't think it has a name. I call it the desperation mindset. It's Sean's nodding. I think you know kind of what I mean, maybe. Yeah. So if you have somebody and you give them an opportunity, and it's like, cool, now your job is to do this thing, then they can often take it as like, if I don't do this thing freaking perfectly, I'm going to lose this opportunity. And then they start hiding a little bit. They're like, I don't want to show weakness. I don't want to show that I'm struggling. I'm going to hide over here or make excuses and nonsense like that. So
and that's also where they oversolve the problem too, right? Where it's like,
yeah.
If you don't check in with them, they spiral downward into this like whole mess of extra credit, basically. Like, well, I tried this and it was pretty good, but then I found like I needed to fix this one thing, so I went off on this whole other tangent because they're trying to like oversolve the problem. I'm like, but you solved it already, right? Like you hit the finish line, right? And that goes back to that, defining the problem. What are we actually trying to do? What does done look like? And it is a complex thing, as you mentioned. Like, it's not something where it's just like, oh, I didn't know that was the finish line. It's also I want to go above and beyond. And sometimes in a work setting, above and beyond in that way is not helping, right? Like yourself or others.
Yeah. It's a tricky balance to have, because you don't really want to tell people don't go above and beyond, but there's a time and a place.
Well, and I think one of the things we do also is show them what that looks like, right? So sometimes over delivering is a good thing because you've recognized some facet of the problem that the people presenting it didn't even realize that they had or were going to have. And then, but then it can also turn into, I've made this unnecessarily complex solution because I wanted to make sure I had considered every eventuality, right?
Yeah. It's difficult. I suppose the crux is really like being able to see the bigger picture and how does it in fact fit into the bigger picture. And that takes a bit of experience and wisdom and experience in the system that you're in, like in the team that you're in, working on the project that you're working on. It's like you don't necessarily know like the longer term effects of your actions when you're new to things. I suppose that's like knowing when to over engineer and knowing when to like go down that rabbit hole. Those are things that come with quite a bit of experience.
And as I like to also remind people, most of our experience is won by making horrible mistakes and having to clean up the messes afterwards. That's
we suffer our way to wisdom.
And that's one of the things I remind them. I think, Kelly, when I was teaching, I think you heard me say this a few times, because the students would invariably compare themselves to the way I coded, right? Oh, Mr. Tiber can just sit there and like write Python code at 60 words per minute, and he knows exactly where it's going to go and what it's going to do. And and Kelly, you were doing this too, especially like after the second or third year. You just like you'd be able to write the example code, without having to think about it or having it ready. And they would look at this and they would have this moment where they're like, oh, I can't do that, right? Like, oh, I'll never be able to do that. And I would remind them, and I think this works equally as well in a work environment and team environment, it's unfair to compare yourself where you are now to where I am now, because what you haven't seen is the 25 years of banging my head against the keyboard, having those oh no moments where things blow up, taking production systems offline, all of those hard-won lessons that result in my experience. So really the only true comparison is to your former self, right? To who you were before and how much you've grown since then. And I think if we can remind them of that, maybe that'll help with some of the growth mindset failures, right? Because it's not so much about comparing yourself to what's possible or what you think I would do or someone else would do. It's more about, well, what could I do today? And what have I done today that I wasn't able to do 5 years ago or 2 years ago or last week?
Yes. Like when I look at my old code, I get very embarrassed. It's, but that is universal. And people should know that. Yeah, I get you.
That's funny.
I know we have a few minutes left. I wanted to come back. I have one final thought, and Kelly, I'm sure you have one also. Why don't you go first, and I'll save mine for the very end.
Oh, no. I was going to switch topics real quick because I wanted to talk. Okay. Well, I really wanted to talk real quick about PyCon Africa, because I want you to give an opportunity for all of our southern hemisphere people and those on the actual continent of Africa. I was in South America, so it's a long way away. But I mean, let's talk for PyCon Africa, and I think Django, you have something coming up for Django too.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm going to DjangoCon Africa. I'm not organizing it, but it is happening in Arusha, Tanzania. So it's very close to Kilimanjaro. You actually fly into the Kilimanjaro airport, and it's going to be cool. This is the second DjangoCon Africa, and the first one was fantastic. So I'm very much looking forward to that, and that's in August. Then PyCon Africa. PyCon Africa has been going for a longer time, and it floats around the continent and visits different countries. And this year it's in South Africa, so it's in my hometown, Johannesburg, and I'm chairing it, which I'm excited about, and it's terrifying, but it's been pretty cool so far. The team is solid. So what can I tell you about it? It is in October, early October. We have some workshops, we have 2 days of talks, we have 2 days of sprints. So it's a format that most Python people are pretty familiar with. The other cool thing about it is it's in Africa. So I am grateful that I get to travel as much as I do. So I get to go to a lot of different conferences around the world, and it's super cool. And whenever I'm out and about, people ask where I'm from, and I say I'm from South Africa, and they get all excited about that, and they're like, "Oh, Africa, awesome!" It's like, "Would you like to go to Africa?" Most people say they want to go and visit Africa, but they don't. But it's generally like as a tourist. I think visiting a conference would be more awesome, because you can always tourist afterwards, but you can tourist with the benefit of knowing some local nerds and making friends, and interacting with the local community in a way that's gives you real connections, real lasting connections. So South Africa's a pretty good place. It's worth a visit.
And you guys are having an education summit as well?
Unfortunately not.
Okay.
Unfortunately not. Not
Next
enough
year.
capacity personally to organize it. But I would very much like to do it in the future. But we do typically have quite a few solid educators at the conference talking about education. So yeah, it is a good place for educators.
That'll be on a bucket list there. Kelly and Sean, South Africa, or in Africa, PyCon Africa.
Yes.
Maybe in 2026. Something on our do list.
Yeah. So I don't know if PyCon Africa will be in South Africa again next year. It's not 100% nailed down, but PyCon South Africa happens in South Africa every year, and it's pretty awesome. That was my first Python conference, and it started a lot of things for me. So this is close to my heart.
Very cool. Sean, you wanted to ask something.
All right. So my last question was coming back to the concept of Ubuntu, and I'm curious to get your perspective on this, because in many ways, especially in the US, programming can be a solitary pursuit as a career, right? It can be very introverted, and it's something that people take on in order to further their own individual career growth, right? So it's not
Yes.
about us, it's about me, and it's about my career and doing the thing that I am passionate about and I'm good at. And for in many ways, it helps select people who are internally motivated and intrinsically driven. But it also makes it sometimes difficult to find ways to help those people become part of a team and to work together, and take that sense of self and self growth and turn that into team and team growth. Not because they don't want to, but because the skills are different and the motivations are different. I guess my question is, in a culture where Ubuntu is a real concept because it has a name and it has tangible expressions of that concept, do you see the same sort of expression of self in people who want to take on a software development career where it's about them, or do they bring that sense of Ubuntu with them, and how does that affect their growth as a developer?
I think it depends a lot. So South Africa's, we call ourselves the Rainbow Nation because it is a very diverse place. We've got 11 official languages. It's too much, too much official languages. So we have a bunch of different cultures in South Africa, and I think people bring those cultures with them to work. So there are aspects of Ubuntu where, like I've seen it with the people that I've worked with, for example. So we would train students, and then we would hire the ones that were like the most, the ones with the teachers' hearts who knew their stuff. And then they would help out. And that was pretty wonderful. And you could see how they would interact with each other. Like if somebody was stuck, then somebody would help. There'd always be somebody around who would help. And the students with the other students as well, like there were people who really took on a lot, like they wanted to take on a teaching role. Even when they just started, they'd be like, oh, this person's stuck. I don't really know how to help them, but I'm going to see if I can try. And that was really lovely. But it varies a lot. You do get people who are very individualistic. I think also if somebody like comes from somewhere quite rural and then they end up getting like a corporate job, then they're like, they don't quite fit in. And so they can then become more individualistic in that setting because it's like, my people are back there. So yeah, that spirit of Ubuntu can be expressed differently in different places. Yeah, I think one thing that's quite interesting about that though, like people with means, we can solve our problems by paying money to make those problems go away. It's like, oh, something is wrong with the plumbing. You call the plumber, or you call an electrician, or you take your car to the mechanic, or you need childcare, you pay for childcare. But if you're in a community that doesn't have that, then it's more of a community because you have to rely on the people around you. So something that I've found, and I think it's a like a studied thing, but I'm not actually certain. But like folks who come from communities with less means that have to rely on them more, rely on each other more, they tend to be like more emotionally aware, more interpersonally aware, and like just calmer with each other. It's because if you're used to like paying professionals to get the thing done and then they didn't do the thing, you're like, what? If you're getting your like neighbor to help you, then your reaction will be quite different. So there's a lot more just like patience, which is also very interesting. Yeah, so it brings a different set of emotional skills and cultural skills. Yeah.
Nice.
Very interesting. Nice. I have so much to ask, but we have so little time. So 54. We aimed for 45 and we get 54. This is usually what happens to us. Do you have any other questions, Sean?
No, I think this is a good place to wrap up and say thank you to Sheena for joining us today. And I'm so glad that we met you at PyCon and had the opportunity to make this connection and make this podcast happen, and hopefully many more like it.
Thank you so much. It was lovely to be here.
And if people want to reach out to you and find out more, maybe about team development or all the other great things, we didn't even touch on the fact that you teach people how to teach and all that other stuff. So I think that's great. Where can they reach you?
Cool. So I have a personal blog at sheenaoc.com. So it's Sheena for O'Connell. And then my my courses and stuff you can find on prelude.tech. Currently, I'm not running any workshops because the teamwork training is keeping me very, very busy, as is PyCon Africa. But in a couple of months, I'll be kicking that off again. But you can join a waiting list, or you can get in touch with me if you need to through either of those places.
Perfect. And that's it then.
Kelly, do we have any announcements this week?
I have no announcements. I'm not going to make any promises, but Sean and I are supposed to do some more recording. I have a whole bunch of people lined up. We'll just see if it happens. And I'm not going to break any promises. But we have a lot of high hopes.
Okay.
And Sean?
No, nothing from my side. I'm looking forward to getting some things done this summer and getting more content put out there. I really enjoyed doing all of the video posts that we did together around AI and education. So looking to identify the next series that we create and publish, because that was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. There's still so much to share. It's like I would have kept it up, but I was finding the pattern of doing that every day. That was definitely a hard thing to do.
Yeah, we made some good progress.
Yeah, we did. Excellent.
All right. Well, why don't we wrap up here then, and we'll get ready for the next episode, I guess, next week. So yep. I'll sign off by saying, for Teaching Python, this is Sean.
And this is Kelly signing off.
All right.